Every death has a story, but these stories took investigators down paths darker than anyone imagined. These are the 5 most disturbing deaths solved with insane twist. On February 9, 1979, 17-year-old Esther Gonzalez set out on foot from her parents' home in Beaumont, California. She was heading to her sister's house in Banning, a walk she knew like the back of her hand. But on this day, Esther never arrived. Esther was one of 7 children. As the 4th, she shared a unique bond with her sister Elizabeth, who was only a year older. Their connection had lasted a lifetime, strengthened by shared experiences and trust. As a pedestrian, Esther often walked between family homes. That night, however, she was being watched by an unseen presence. The morning of February 10th brought grim news. A caller reported a body buried in the snow alongside Highway 243 near Banning. The caller offered few details and refused to reveal the victim's gender. Officers were left with more questions than answers. The man was later described as uncooperative. Upon arrival, deputies discovered Esther Gonzalez's body. She had been brutally attacked and left exposed to the harsh elements. With no witnesses and no surveillance footage, investigators had only the cryptic call as a potential lead. After 5 days, authorities finally tracked down the caller. He was Lewis Randolph "Randy" Williamson, a Marine Corps veteran. His record was relatively clean, with no prior violent convictions, though past accusations existed. DNA testing in 1979 was not available, severely limiting investigative options. Williamson agreed to a lie detector test. He passed. As a result, he was no longer considered a suspect. Randy Williamson went on to rebuild his life. He eventually relocated to Florida and never faced charges for violent crimes. He passed away in 2014 from natural causes. Esther's case remained unsolved for over 40 years. In 2019, Riverside County formed a cold case unit. New hope emerged for Esther's case. A biological sample collected from her body decades earlier remained viable for testing. Although the DNA sample had been uploaded to the national database years prior without a match, advancements in forensic technology changed the game. Investigators sent the evidence to Aramink, a Texas lab specializing in forensic genealogy. By analyzing DNA and constructing family trees, they began connecting the dots. The evidence pointed straight back to Randy Williamson. Though cleared in 1979 due to a polygraph test, DNA evidence had not existed then. Investigators sought his DNA from his 2014 autopsy in Florida. Fortunately, a blood sample had been preserved. Florida authorities collaborated with California investigators to allow testing. The DNA analysis yielded a definite match. Randy Williamson's DNA directly matched the sample recovered from Esther's body nearly 40 years earlier. The man who had called the police as a witness was the culprit all along. He had misled investigators and evaded accountability for decades. It remains unclear whether Esther was a random victim or someone he knew. What is clear is that his lack of convictions kept his DNA out of the system, allowing him to avoid detection. After decades of uncertainty, Riverside community officials confirmed in 2024 that Williamson was the prime suspect. Esther's family was informed immediately. Elizabeth Gonzalez, now 64, expressed mixed emotions: relief at finally having answers, sadness that Williams would not face justice in court. Her brother Eddie publicly thanked the detectives, acknowledging that the family finally had closure. Investigators highlighted the power of forensic genealogy in solving cold cases. Traditional leads had dried up, but DNA made it possible to finally connect the pieces. Esther Gonzalez was only 17 when her life was tragically cut short. Her walk, one she had believed was safe, ended in horror. 45 years later, justice finally caught up. Her memory lives on, never fading from the hearts of those who loved her. It was a typical Saturday evening in McAllen, Texas, on April 16, 1960. 25-year-old Irene Garza, a beloved teacher, left her parents' home, unaware of the tragic events that awaited her. She was on her way to Sacred Heart Catholic Church to attend confession on the eve of Easter, a night of reflection and preparation for the resurrection. Irene's life had already left a mark on her community. She had been crowned Miss All South Texas Sweetheart in 1958 and served as homecoming queen at Pan American College. Beyond her beauty, she was known for her deep faith and compassionate heart, tirelessly working with underprivileged children and actively participating in the Legion of Mary. That night, Irene never returned home. By 3 a.m., her worried parents reported her missing. At first, they thought she might have stayed for the Easter Vigil, but concern grew as the hours passed. The Rio Grande Valley came together. Volunteers searched tirelessly for Irene. Tragically, her personal belongings were found abandoned along a road: her purse, a shoe, and a lace veil. 5 days later, her body was discovered in a canal, several miles from where she was last seen. The autopsy revealed horrific injuries. Irene had suffered blunt force trauma and asphyxiation. Additional harm had been inflicted while she was unconscious. Her face was bruised, though the water had erased much of the evidence. Nearby, investigators found a crucial clue: a slide viewer with a black cord. It was traced to a surprising suspect, Father John Bernard Fate, a 27-year-old visiting priest at Sacred Heart Church. He had been the last known person to see Irene alive. Parishioners later recalled unusual behavior from Father Fate that night. The confession line moved at a glacial pace. He left the sanctuary multiple times. Other priests noticed scratches on his hands after Easter Mass. When asked, Fate claimed he had broken his glasses and cut himself on a window frame. Skepticism remained, and a polygraph test, later called inconclusive, only fueled suspicion. Church leaders privately pressured police to step back. In the 1960s, accusing a priest of such a crime was nearly unimaginable. As the investigation lost momentum, authorities recalled a similar incident involving Maria America at a different church. Father Fate acknowledged his presence, but denied involvement. Though charged, the trial ended in a mistrial. He ultimately pleaded no contest to aggravated assault and received a $500 fine. Afterwards, Fate was sent to a monastery in Missouri for reflection and rehabilitation. A monk named Dale Tacchini was informed of Fate's past, that he had taken a life and needed guidance. Fate later confessed to the monks that he had harmed one woman and caused the death of another. Tacchini remained silent, believing it was not his role to report the confessions. Fate then relocated to Yemen Springs, New Mexico, a center supporting priests with personal issues. There, he took on a role of proving priests for assignments, some of whom later committed heinous acts against children. He left the priesthood in the 1970s, married, and moved to Phoenix. For 17 years, he volunteered at a food bank, building a reputation as kind and generous. It wasn't until 2002 that Tacchini came forward about Fate's admissions. Around the same time, another priest, Joseph O'Brien, revealed that Fate had confessed to him about Irene's death. Despite new testimony, a 2004 grand jury declined to indict Fate. Key witnesses had not been called. Through it all, Irene's family never gave up. Nami Sigler, a devoted relative, played a pivotal role in keeping the case alive. When Ricardo Rodriguez ran for district attorney in 2014, he promised to reopen Irene's long-dormant case. After winning office, He relaunched the investigation in 2015, bringing new energy to the pursuit of justice. Fate was arrested in Arizona in 2016 at age 83. His bond was set at $1 million, reflecting the gravity of the charges. He pleaded not guilty, and the case entered a lengthy legal process. In November 2017, the trial began. The prosecution presented a comprehensive case that included evidence found near Irene's body, inconsistencies in Fate's statements, physical signs of struggle, his failed polygraph, and his own admissions. Seeking justice for decades of delay, they requested a 57-year sentence. On December 7, 2017, Fate was convicted. The following day, he was sentenced to life in prison, ensuring he would spend the remainder of his days behind bars. Fate died in 2020 at age 87 while incarcerated. After nearly 6 decades, Irene Garza's family finally saw justice served. Her memory was honored, and the truth about her disappearance was revealed. Closure, long awaited, had finally come. May 2nd, 2001 started like any other day in Chevy Chase, Maryland. But for Leslie Prier's co-workers, the morning quickly turned worrisome. The 50-year-old advertising production specialist did not report to work. Leslie's punctuality was legendary. When she didn't show up or call by mid-morning, concern grew. One coworker reached out to her husband, Carl Prier. He reported that he had last seen Leslie at 7:45 that morning. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Concerned, Carl decided to head home with the coworker. When they arrived and stepped inside, they were met with a horrific sight. Blood had stained the entrance hall. In a state of panic, Carl frantically searched the house, calling out for Leslie. His desperate cries were met with silence. It wasn't until they reached the upstairs area that they found her lifeless body. Leslie's body showed clear signs of trauma. The scene indicated a fierce struggle had taken place, yet there was no sign of forced entry. Questions mounted. The neighborhood was known for tranquility and low crime rates. It seemed an unlikely backdrop for such brutality. Police, experienced in crime scenes, were shocked. The violence and ferocity in this home were unprecedented for the area. The crime scene painted a gruesome picture. Blood splattered throughout the house, especially in the upstairs bedroom. Autopsies reports confirmed the cause of death: blunt force trauma resulting from the struggle. DNA evidence under Leslie's fingernails indicated she had fought her attacker. But in 2001, the DNA profile matched no one in the database. The case went cold due to lack of leads. Around the time of Leslie's death, her teenage daughter, Lauren, was in a relationship with 21-year-old Eugene Gleiger. He was only a few years older and had gained the family's trust. Their relationship began when Lauren was 15, and both families were close. No one suspected him. Following Leslie's funeral, the case faded from public attention. Police retained the evidence, hoping for a breakthrough that never came. Lauren spent the next 20 years grappling with the unanswered question: who was responsible for her mother's death? In 2022, Montgomery County Police revived cold cases using forensic genealogy. This technique uses partial DNA matches in genealogy databases to identify suspects through distant relatives. Experts found a distant match to someone with ancestry from Romania, a crucial lead. By meticulously mapping the family tree, investigators identified Eugene Gleiger. Investigators were stunned. Gleiger's connection went far beyond a mere name. He had dated Lauren, been inside the Prier home, and his DNA was found in multiple locations, including under Leslie's fingernails. The struggle had been intense. The DNA under Leslie's nails provided crucial evidence. Airport staff gave Gleiger a water bottle. Once discarded, Forensic experts tested it for DNA comparison. After confirming the match, authorities apprehended Gligor in Washington, D.C. on June 21, 2024. The U.S. Marshals Task Force assisted in his capture. Gligor's co-workers described him as calm and positive. They were unaware of the heinous crime he had committed in 2001. This would only come to light years later through DNA evidence. The revelation was heartbreaking for Lauren. She had bumped into Gligor at a restaurant the previous year, sharing a normal conversation, completely unaware of his dark past. The news of his involvement devastated her. The fact that his motives remained unclear made it even more disturbing. Police knew of Gligor's troubled teenage past, but there were no signs of violent tendencies. The reason behind his actions remained a mystery. What compounded the tragedy, Leslie had likely let Gligor into the house herself. She could not have suspected the horrific fate awaiting her. The case marked a milestone in Maryland's law enforcement history. It was the state's first to be solved using forensic genealogy. After 23 years, justice was finally served. Gligor was charged in connection with Leslie's death. The charge was later reduced from first-degree to second-degree murder. In May 2025, Eugene Gligor pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. He faced up to 30 years in prison, but was ultimately sentenced to 22 years, with 5 years of supervised probation on August 28, 2025. The Preer family finally found closure. Yet the revelation that a familiar and trusted figure was the perpetrator was a painful reminder of the deception they had endured for decades. A beautiful Sunday in Chicago, October 16, 1955, began for Robert Peterson, 14, and his friends John and Anton Schuessler, 13 and 11, with a simple plan. The three friends were headed to the Loop Theater on North State Street. They wanted to see the Disney documentary The African Lion, a popular attraction in downtown Chicago. Each boy had his own interest. John was spiritually inclined and thought about becoming a priest. Anton was fascinated by animals and dreamed of becoming a veterinarian. Robert found his joy in bowling. After leaving Jefferson Park in the afternoon, the boys were expected home before nightfall. But as the hours passed, they did not return. Their families grew increasingly worried. Malcolm Peterson, Robert's father, went to the police station on Gale Street to file a missing persons report. Detective James Jack had just finished his shift, but stayed on to assist in the search. He and his partner scoured the rain-soaked streets of Chicago. Yet the boys remained missing. The following day, the families pieced together the boys' last known activities. They had indeed attended the movie and later visited the Monte Cristo bowling alley on West Montrose Avenue, about 8 miles from downtown. The trail went cold there. But on October 18th, a man near Robinson Woods Forest Preserve made a horrific discovery. He found what appeared to be a body in a ditch. Police responded immediately. What they found was a scene that would haunt the city for years. In a shocking and disturbing discovery, the bodies of Robert, John, and Anton were found stacked in a shallow ditch. They had been stripped, gagged, tied up, and brutally strangled. Robert's body had an additional 14 deep lacerations on his head. No clothing or conclusive evidence was recovered, only the gruesome crime scene. The crime scene was compromised as reporters and officers walked through it. Potential evidence was destroyed. With forensic science still in its infancy in 1955, investigators faced enormous challenges. The case gained national attention, but key leads were not adequately pursued. Eyewitnesses reported screams from nearby stables. Suspicious tire tracks were found. In May 1956, the stables mysteriously burned down. Arson was suspected, possibly to destroy evidence. Investigations stalled. The Schuessler family suffered more heartbreak. Anton Sr. died of a heart attack just a month after losing his sons. Detective Jack remained haunted by the case. Every year, he visited the boys' graves, even in his later years. He eventually wrote the book, Three Boys Missing, to keep their memory alive. Decades later, in the 1990s, a breakthrough emerged. In 1994, federal agents investigating the disappearance of Candy Hellman and Aaron Brock came across the name Kenneth Hansen. Multiple sources claimed Hansen had admitted to the killings decades earlier. One informant recalled Hansen threatening that anyone who crossed him would end up like the Peterson boy. Hansen had worked at Idle Hour Stables in 1955 and lived near where the boys were last seen. A previous arson arrest in 1970 provided grounds for a warrant. Hansen was arrested in July 1994 and charged in connection with the case. Investigators alleged he lured the boys while they were hitchhiking, promising to show them horses. Investigators theorized that the assault started with the two younger boys at the stables. When Robert intervened, he suffered the brutal cuts. Hansen then allegedly strangled all three victims. Forensic evidence confirmed the boys had been inside a barn. Hay was found in their lungs, and rope bindings matched those used in stables. Marks on their bodies matched the floor mats of a Packard station wagon, linked to Hansen and his associate, Silas Jane. Silas Jane, a prominent figure in the horse industry, allegedly ordered the barn fire to protect his reputation. In 1995, Hansen went on trial. He was convicted based on eyewitness accounts of his alleged confessions, receiving 461 years plus life in prison. His conviction was overturned in 2000, but a second trial in 2002 resulted in another guilty verdict and life imprisonment. Hansen died in 2007 at age 74, still maintaining his innocence. Detective Jack found some measure of closure, but the families of the boys continued to grapple with the enduring pain of their tragic loss. Barbara Mae Tucker, a 19-year-old business major at Mount Hood Community College, was walking to her evening class on January 15, 1980 in Gresham, Oregon. Known for her intelligence, compassion, and vibrant personality, Barbara's promising evening was cut tragically short. She never arrived at her class. In the early hours of the next day, students walking to campus discovered her body near a parking lot off Kane Road. Barbara was partially dressed, and the scene suggested a vicious assault had taken place in the freezing cold. The medical examiner confirmed it. Barbara's death was the result of a violent assault. Investigators quickly began treating the case as a homicide. Witnesses described a chaotic scene that night. One reported a woman with a bloody face fleeing from the bushes, desperately seeking help. Another heard anguished screams. Some witnesses saw two figures in the distance. One person even noticed a man hiding near the parking lot. Evidence showed that Barbara had struggled to defend herself. She tried to break free, but she didn't receive the timely assistance she needed. Despite the detectives' best efforts, the case went cold. Autopsy swabs and physical evidence had been collected, but the lack of DNA technology in 1980 limited further investigation. Without a suspect or clear connections to Barbara, leads ran thin. Her family, however, refused to give up hope. A breakthrough came in 2000 when the Oregon State Police Crime Lab successfully extracted a DNA profile from the preserved evidence. But the National DNA Database returned no matches. The case stalled until 2021. Parabon Nanolabs joined the investigation, applying advanced DNA genealogy techniques. By comparing crime scene evidence to family trees, they aimed to narrow the search. C.C. Moore, Parabon's chief genealogist, noticed one striking detail in the DNA. The suspect likely had red hair. This unique trait refined the search parameters. Genealogical research pointed to Robert Arthur Plimpton, a 56-year-old resident of Troutdale, Oregon. Investigators learned he was only 16 years old when Barbara was killed. He had no known connection to her, and his name had never surfaced during the original investigation. Detectives discreetly monitored Plimpton's activities. Eventually, they obtained a piece of discarded chewing gum. DNA testing confirmed it matched the evidence from 1980. Plimpton was arrested on June 8, 2021, outside his residence. He faced charges of first-degree murder and several counts of second-degree murder. The trial began in 2024 under Judge Amy Baio. Prosecutors presented DNA evidence and called witnesses from the original investigation. One testified to seeing a man escorting Barbara from the wooded area. Another recalled someone hiding in the bushes. After more than 40 years, Barbara's sisters, Alice Wan and Susan Pear, attended the trial, seeking justice for their sibling. The defense raised points of uncertainty. Witness descriptions suggested a man around 6 feet tall, whereas Plimpton was 5'9". Barbara's clothing had not been DNA tested, which could have offered additional insight. And the timing of the attack relative to her death could not be precisely confirmed, leaving some charges unsustained. Despite these arguments, on March 15, 2024, Judge Baio ruled that the evidence proved Plimpton's guilt in fatally beating Barbara. He was convicted of first-degree murder and 4 counts of second-degree murder. Plimpton maintains his innocence and plans to appeal. As the verdict was read, Barbara's family wept. Alice described her sister as a special, caring child, relieved that the truth was finally revealed. Susan shared the family's pain and frustration over Plimpton's decades-long freedom. Plimpton's sentencing in late 2024 resulted in a life prison term, with the possibility of parole after 30 years. Barbara Tucker's case, the oldest cold case in Gresham, Oregon, was finally solved. Modern DNA technology and a single piece of gum had brought justice after more than 4 decades. Click on the next video to see more shocking videos.